So the detail patches is sort of a more advanced tool based on the same idea as the transform tool that we have. And detail patches are what we use for basically like foliage and really, really small props. So I'll just grab the scene and bake our details. So you can see there's no plants right now in the scene. And we have this tool that basically converts them all into meshes, but I'll unconvert one so you can see how it works. This tool is a lifesaver. It literally made the game possible. We couldn't have made the art for the game without this. So you can see now, this is one of our detail patches. I'll grab this one. So we have a bunch of them in here. And I will unbake the detail patch so that we can edit it.
So this generates a bunch of like instances of little like plant details, and I guess it's different for each planet.
Yes, exactly. So there's a few things about this, and I'll kind of run through it quickly. But we have detail palettes, which are basically these assets that we create, where we determine, how many meshes go into the detail palette, and we can determine the density. So like this mesh, for example, you can see down there, it's these little red flowers. We can determine what material it should use, if we want to randomize rotation, scale, or color, what it should align to, whether it's gravity or the surface that it's snapped to. And then the density value here changes the ratio of it when we randomize. Nice. And so the random is basically a tool on the detail patch itself, where we can basically just, scatter these about, which is really handy for just like quickly getting some variety. And you can change the count here. So, if we want to be more dense, can add more of them, can also change the shape. And the really nice thing about these is that they're basically volumes and they snap to whatever's underneath them. So if you want plants all over this stump, you can just like drag it there and they'll go. And you're like, that one looks kind of awkward. We have an edit mode, so you can go in and take this one and manually move it somewhere else.
Oh, nice. So you can customize those inspector variables before generating and after generating. You have two options. So
yeah, it's completely it's reversible entirely. So once we have this detail patch, you can save it out as a template, load in templates. If I just click bake detail again, that turns it back into a mesh. And we have an automated script that runs whenever we make a build that just goes through the entire game and bakes all these out. So then they just turn into geometry.
It just optimizes.
Exactly. So that I like to tell an anecdote about how in the first year of development, where we didn't have the support of Annapurna yet, I went through and populated the old version of the village with ferns, because it was like, oh, we want plants everywhere. And it took me about 2 weeks of just doing what John showed, of going in and like duplicating each fern, scaling it a little bit, rotating it around. And when we got the detail patch tool in later, I did the same amount of work in about an afternoon. I created the detail palettes, set up the detail patches, duplicated them around the village, and it was 10 times as many plants, and it took me an afternoon instead of 2 weeks. So
I'm very interested in how you got to the point where you're like, okay, this is a tool we need to make. Was that a specific request of you, from you as the art director, or how do you come to the conclusion of what tools you should build and what tools you should what things should be done manually and what should be built as a tool?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because of the way our development worked, where we had the alpha build and then we worked on it for a while and then we sort of rebooted the art, we had a lot of things in mind in terms of this is a tool that we really should make, because we spent a lot of time doing this, and it's the kind of thing you could automate a lot within a clever script. And so when we were rebooting our art style, we took the time to sit down and be like, okay, what are the top priority tools that we want to save us time? And this was at the top of the list, because a lot of games sort of get around this by having, height maps, and you get data from the height map, and then you use that to propagate plants throughout the game. There's some cool videos on Horizon Zero Dawn that show that kind of stuff. But again, because we're working on spheres, we can't use height maps because they're all square projection-based things. So this was essentially our workaround so that we could arbitrarily put plants on, any angle in Unity without having to do a lot of manual rotations.
And this automatically snaps to the terrain, so it doesn't matter that the terrain is spherical?
Correct. It snaps to the terrain. You can also just set it to snap to like any collider. So that's how I was able to like put the plants on top of this stump. But you can choose a specific mesh as well, and we often will like set it to snap to the terrain specifically because, you know, we don't want plants growing on top of random stuff.
Yeah, you don't want plants on the trees. That would look
exactly
climbing all the way to the top.
And the other big benefit to this tool is sort of the first pillar of art that I mentioned, which is that level design is huge. So you know, we use plants all over the game to guide the eye. So, you know, we try not to have plants in the middle of the road like this. You can see they're all like out of the way. So it very clearly like emphasizes the pathway that you're supposed to take.